ya ta chiro kanga tashi dele tene teri yo nganzo ta ya karse karo ta ka sanga mani nganzo lo ya lo ru ko ba je te ti go na wo chi to ne ma yong ya ta teri yo tem go is.
So first of all, Tashidele, greetings to all of my Dharma friends. Today, as before, in these shorter sessions, we will be covering the various essential points of the Lam Rim, the stages of the path to enlightenment, from the perspective of meditation.
다 되는 애들은 야 로르가 보고 걸어 좀 뭐 야 발에 다 들이 아니 시부 체밀 런지 깔아 다 서도 세이나 다 대시 그 자와 얘네 지는 지킬 렘바도 말렘바 다 요소 조바디 대시 그 자와 쇼바도 니지 사 디고 다 니지고 그더니 디디치스.
So in terms of what we will be presenting today out of the three scopes, this comes from the Great Scope, and this is also something that we can say is the root of all happiness. We can say that the root of all happiness comes from developing the minds of love and compassion. And today we'll be specifically speaking about compassion.
쇼바도 니지 세대 디거더니 가제스 보게 셀냐 도바 아니 야 템보 슈나 보게 대시 요요 방아도
And all of us, we can check definitely with the measure of love and compassion. If we bring forth that love and compassion as much as possible and try to keep it in our mind, we can see that correspondingly there is a happiness that arises.
이나요더니 보게 야 떼지 설이나 다 유야 지진을 라고다고 지오래라 이나요 땜보지고요 말했어.
And so it is easy to bring up kind of like a measure of this love and compassion for all of us to generate it a little bit, but in terms of keeping it a long time and stable, we aren't able to do that.
당가로서 강가지 바라와스 리데와도 가제이나 데워 어느 셈 가제이나 끼워 대용한테는 디세 림보 땜보지고요 말했어.
And all of us, right, in terms of what we're seeking for ourselves, we're seeking the same thing. In addition to our body being well and feeling happy, we also want our mind to be happy, and we want that happiness and peace to be long-lasting.
센더 좀 많이 봐. 시와는 시와 손지 마도 받은 가로서 파파 끼고 저는 로타 든지가 다스 야 땜보지고요 말했어.
And we want to think about it not just from the perspective of the happiness of this lifetime alone, but from lifetime to lifetime, all the way until we achieve Buddhahood. Ideally, we want to be able to have a happiness that lasts for all that.
어다 대용화를 드nik 저야 저도 지에 뭐 지고요 이사 가르가르 그래서 다 디디지마.
And so in order to be able to achieve that lasting, stable happiness, what are the causes and conditions that we need to bring about, that we need to cultivate? So briefly, I will touch on those points. So as a first step, let's just make a determination that I will get rid of the useless thoughts, the discursive thoughts within my mind, and I will try to place the body and mind in a relaxed state.
쇼바도 이지으더니 셈 땜보 치포게 돈보용아 테니 다 땜보 치네 파데야라 아니 좀 바통보 저쪽으로 가는 거지 그래서나스.
So if we were to ask in terms of having this love and compassion come forth in our mind in a stable way, and in order to be able to keep our mind on love and compassion, what is the first thing that we need to bring forth if we were to ask that?
다 단답받은 가로스가 나선이 서서 본다고 또 손을 떠네 담만을 내가 했으니 대시 때문에 되어왔어.
We can reflect that until now, seeing this I or this self as being the most important, we have worked exclusively for its sake. but we have not been able to achieve anything stable, any stable happiness from that.
Tindrika semite pa yuanila rinpa tongpo tila. Se yabu ngine she toya tani sajin rabo yabu jiswa yes.
So in order to be able to get rid of that sort of self-grasping attitude, to bring forth the positive states we want to bring forth, first we have to be able to establish a basis for those, a foundation for those in our mind.
Pena shimbaji inayo apodo tsalumala suba. Halega pasa tsuba jachiwa zuyame bachi puyona. Deshe saga saje pita bachi pugunduwas.
So it's just like a farmer, perhaps a farmer who wants to plant an orchard of apples or oranges. The first thing that he or she needs to do is they need to make sure that they have a vast field free of any encumbrances.
Tedon rawas. Ani sem rong chinzala suba pa desi yuanela rong to. Ani soso we nomento. Ani medo. Ani tendo rong ye roari chuga seji sudosu inayo. Ani dewan deba, dungaman deba. Cha tojene jibayi sombetone. Temposhis.
So just like that, in order to prepare the field of our mind to set aside this self-cherishing, we should think that just as we ourselves have a wish, just as all human beings have a wish, just as all those in the animal realm have a wish, indeed just as ourselves and others, any being in the sixth realm have the same wish, which is to be able to achieve a stable happiness and be completely separated from suffering. And then perhaps thinking, well, I don't know this particular sentient being or that particular sentient being, setting aside concern for their happiness and so forth. This is something inappropriate. So just as the person who we cherish very much, the person closest to us in this life, they don't want to experience any suffering whatsoever. Also, those people that we don't know or those beings that we haven't had contact with, they also don't want to suffer. They have the same wish. And similarly, those beings who we know perhaps in human form, those beings who we see as our enemies or who we think have harmed us, similarly, we shouldn't set them aside because they also have this wish to be free from suffering. So then, thinking that those beings who are close to me, those beings who I don't know, those beings who are my enemies, all of them have the same basic natural wish, which is to be able to achieve happiness and be able to avoid suffering. Therefore, all of these beings are by that measure the same. So meditate on equanimity. Actually, bringing forth this mind of equanimity, thinking about the sameness of the wish of all of those beings, this is one of the very best ways to make our mind relaxed and correspondingly to have better physical health and so forth. And that's because this mind of equanimity, it acts as an antidote towards minds that cause so much unsettlement, the attitude of holding some close and others far away, and the corresponding feelings of attachment and aversion. Equanimity is an antidote to those. And so having prepared the field in this way, then what is the main seed that we want to plant there? So first of all, we want to think from the perspective of, we understand that just as in this lifetime, my father, my mother, my family, my friends are unbelievably close to me and have benefited me, if I think about this I or this self, which has had so many previous lifetimes, there is no being within the 6 realms who I have not been connected to, who I have not been close to, who has not benefited me and does not have that same wish to achieve happiness, avoid suffering. So just as by preparing the field and planting the apple and the orange seeds, we can reap a rich harvest of fruit, by cultivating this mind of feeling that all sentient beings are connected to me, are close to me, we can reap a rich harvest of happiness and realization. So what do we have to think now that we have thought about ourselves connected to all of these sentient beings? For all of these previous lifetimes, we have to think that we have to remember their kindness, to think that all of these sentient beings have benefited me at one point or another. They have benefited me even when I may not have directly known them, as well as they have benefited me when they have been close to me. And in this way, we reflect on sentient beings. So even if you think about from the perspective of this life, the house we live in, the clothes we wear, the food that we eat, and so forth, all of these facilities that contribute to our happiness, many of them have arisen through the kindness of people we don't know or have never met. So remembering their kindness, then what do we have to do? We have to develop that wish to repay their kindness. So we contemplate, may I repay their kindness?
Tene layo tene ke che la tene senje yo so zo ba ga chi chu me ba. Ba ma chi chu me ba sen de ke ye ya shu mo ju yi de ho ya po chi kala kala thong.
And then by thinking in this way, we will see amongst all of these sentient beings, because they've all been connected to me, there is no enemy. There is no stranger. They have all shown me kindness. And we will be able to bring forth a mind which sees beings as attractive, which sees beings with affection.
Sabe de ya xie ya la ya po sabe de ji chi du li ya bo yu na kon ya bo ji ya xie yang ge wa ste no shi.
And with the field analogy, this is like the step of having planted the seeds and so forth. We then water them and we give fertilizer to them so that they can reap a harvest. This is like that step.
Tenji ge so so nye za che shu ga ji qian bo sen je yu tene mo mo ji de wa te yu zo zu ba de ta de ne ga le ko yi ge nyo dan lo ba zhen ne le di to no ba gen de ga de na ga ne xi ya de ga ne de to cha ju ma ru nyo de so no to ne ni ji ya.
And then thinking all of these beings who are just like the person closest to me, all of those many sentient beings, they are temporarily at this point trapped within samsara, within cyclic existence, and they are encountering all of these problems. May they be separated from that suffering and the causes of that suffering. How wonderful if they could be separated from that suffering, from those problems and their causes. And in this way, we contemplate compassion. Think about all of those beings who we can see now directly with technology who are involved in wars and conflicts and all of that suffering. And think how wonderful if they could be completely separated from all of those sufferings and problems of samsara. So think, may all of those 6 types of beings wandering within samsara and encountering those problems of samsara, may I myself alone help them to be rid of that suffering and its causes, and we bring forth this superior intention. So think about from the point of view of the outer conditions, from the point of view of the inner conditions. I can definitely cultivate to a point where I can meaningfully lead beings away, lead all sentient beings away from that suffering and its causes. So we'll pause there.
Oda didichi tendichire saniji chemo roto tando to damanda chinduas so solo mari bigit kange tena tendichine tedo tana chimaru sono toya so kange chane sono tone tedo tana tanda tenoji roto damanda yo ares chata.
So Geshe said that concludes his brief presentation and our brief contemplation of this topic of great compassion. He's just reminding you that we can think of this topic from different angles. We can think, may beings be separated. How wonderful if they were separated from the ignorant ignorance and all of the problems that unfold from ignorance, right? All of the suffering. Or we can think, may they be separated from the suffering itself. How wonderful if they could be separated from the suffering itself. So different angles.
아니 돈요가 사지해야 되라 다 돈요고야 되라 아니 리치 노는 오 돈요고서나 챈디 nye 강가로 nye 통야 봐 가고자 봐 자가서 된 첨부지 노요 아레스.
Also, another thing, a mistake that Geshe wants to point out when we talk about preparing the foundation ground of equanimity, some people might think, well, when we talk about having equanimity for beings, that means that beings that we feel close to, like we'll draw farther away from them, we'll lose that feeling of closeness. But that's a mistaken understanding.
시도 돈요서는 또 테니 콜롱관도 몸보여 아레 되네 단단 아주 야쇼데 챈딜 녜텔 대화 그거 요바 강에 그거 몇 소소 좋아 템보진 디와스 대뇽바데 바망걸 파포와이나 대선 도 되보여 아레스
양대선도
몸무시발 봐
네.
지바레에서 어떤 거나 예 지바인 바걸 봐 뇽방걸 거나 되보여 아레스.
So Geshe is saying that one of the easy ways to kind of grapple with this is to think in terms of remember those people that are close to you, your family and so forth, and bring forth that feeling and that wish that they have happiness and they feel free from suffering. And then what you try to do is bring that same wish for them to have happiness and be free from suffering and carry that over to the beings that you don't know and so forth.
아니 데리야 단걸 파도나 아니 강간예 지바인 바걸 봐 뇽방걸 로소나 아니 여러 지주면 되고
And Geshe said, then if you carry that same wish for beings to be free from suffering and achieve happiness to even those beings that you see as your enemies, then you have an equanimity from the sense of having that same wish for all of those three groups, friends, enemies, and strangers, and you don't lose that initial feeling of closeness for the close people in your life.
어제도 덴바리라 소소를 계속 첨보요 아래 전에 소소를 계속 그거 아래 중국어 매 이제 쪼디 되는데.
So this is the reason that we cultivate this, because it brings forth benefits, and of course we want to come to a profit because of our practice, not to a loss. So this is one of the ways to ensure that.
야 뒤에 가빈건 했더니 야녀래야 보시르지.
So thank you very much, and having understood this with a joyful mind, please engage well in the practice.
야.